Hey, Ryan here with another social skills video. I've been coaching social skills full-time for over 11 years now. Areas such as how to not run out of things to say in conversation, how to overcome nervousness in social situations, how to be funny, and more. Today's video, I'm going to go through how you can more quickly and more effectively overcome nervousness or negative thinking around socializing, especially in terms of speaking to new people, so you can become less nervous or have a less negative mindset faster. So first of all, if we had a sliding scale where in the middle, this person who's in the middle is fully accurately assessing reality and they're spot on. And then on one extreme end and the other, we have someone who only perceives things negatively and only perceives things positively to the point where they're insane. My experience of coaching, and also from outside of coaching as well, is that about 99% of people tend to be not actually assessing reality properly and are more negative, seeing things more negatively than is actually true regarding, well, most things really, but especially in terms of how people are generally going to react if they're going to speak to them. Commonly people say things like, oh, I think that they're gonna reject me or ignore me or find it like weird in a bad way that I'm talking to them. And almost all of the time, I'd say more than 99% of the time, people are surprised at how nice people are when they go and talk to them. Now, I can't guarantee this is going to be the same everywhere in the world. I meet people from lots of different places, and there's people from lots of different areas of the world in London, so I feel like I've got quite a good perspective and I've travelled quite a bit. And I can't imagine it being too different in almost any place in the world, because humans are mostly the same. Cultural differences usually don't make that much of a difference. People tend to overemphasize them. So it's worth knowing that straight away. Almost definitely you're seeing things more negatively than they are in reality. But for social situations, for optimum, I don't think is to actually see things in a realistic way. That makes sense if you're doing something like building a bridge. Loads of our clients are engineers. So a lot of the mindset for being an engineer, and also like the stereotypical nerd, tends to be kind of backwards for socializing. For social situations, honestly, I think you are much better off seeing things more positively than they really are. So much to the point that you're only just about not actually crazy. I think that's for optimum. Top level social skills, I think, requires being purposely slightly deluded towards being positive. And the reason for this is because of, towards being positive and confident, by the way, both of those things. The reason for this is because emotions change stuff very fast in social situations. If you perceive things more positively than they really are, it's going to influence your emotions. It's going to influence your body language, your voice tone, your words. I personally know that humans also send energy. Some people don't believe in that. If you don't, that's fine. It's also happening through body language, voice tone, words, actions, etc. It's going to influence that, and it tends to lean things towards being more that way. For example, if you say a joke but it's not very good and you do it confidently, people will more often laugh. Also, another example of seeing things more positively, someone is making fun of you, you're not sure whether they're being nice and trying to make a joke or whether they're being insulting. Sometimes that person isn't even completely sure of themselves and they're kind of testing things. People do this fairly often, especially but not always, but especially people who tend to orient towards bullying people. In this situation, if you just assume that they're being positive and act as if that's the case, lots of the time you're going to shift the situation in that direction. So emotions change things fast in social situations. If we were building a bridge and we were trying on purpose to be overly optimistic, then the bridge is going to end up a pretty dangerous bridge, right? So it doesn't make sense if you're building a bridge or doing something like that. But in social situations, it does make sense because the perception has a big impact on the reality fast, for those reasons that I just explained. So, almost for certain, you're at the point where you're not accurately perceiving reality and you're perceiving it in a way that's more negative. That person is judging me over there. That person, if I speak to them, they're gonna like laugh at me or ignore me or think I'm an idiot or something. I'm realistically towards negative, but the optimum is unrealistically towards positive. So here's how we can get there. This is especially likely if you're someone who tends to be nervous around social situations or tends to have a negative mindset and think people are thinking about them and stuff like that. So here's what we can do. When you have social situations, so you speak to a new person, you speak to someone you already know even, but especially new people, or you go to like an event or something like a workshop. We are on workshops on Thursdays and Sundays in London, or like a class, like a hobby, like karate or bouldering or something like that. When you have a positive interaction with someone, you want to do these things and try to make sure to remember them. One, make it last as long as you can. So that's going to be up until the point where the other person says they've got to go. Or here's how you can make it last as long as you can, and at the same time make sure that you're not bothering people and like just constantly talking to them. They want you to leave. It's fairly simple. 2 times that are good to leave. 1, if they give you some kind of communication where it's ridiculous to interpret it in any way other than they want you to go now. So if someone said, "I'm busy, please leave me alone," and I tried to argue that, yeah, they might still want to talk to you. Okay, theoretically, there's a chance above 0 that they still want to talk to you, but it's not plausible. It's kind of laughable to suggest that that person still wants to talk. So that might be they turn away clearly in response to you saying something to them, or it might be that they say that they need to finish something, so they'll speak to you later, something like that. If you get one of these types of signal, that's a good time to leave. So just one specific example to mention regarding that. If someone completely does not respond to you at all the first time you go to speak to them, make sure that you're sure they have definitely A, heard you, and B, that they knew you were speaking to them and not to someone else, not on the phone. So make sure that you use your body also to say hello or to whatever you're going to say to them. Because a lot of the time I get people who think that someone completely blanked them, but I can tell that they didn't hear them. If they didn't even change any of their body language whatsoever, they probably didn't hear you or probably didn't think that you were speaking to them. If someone blanks someone, usually they still have some change in body language, like they'll look down a bit or like move their eyes or something along those lines. And also that's very rare that happens, by the way. The only time that can happen a bit more commonly is if you are hitting on someone, usually a guy hitting on a girl, and it's in a way that's being seen as a bit creepy, or if you look like you're super drunk or something like that. Apart from that, it's super rare that this actually happens. So either 1, signal that's completely unambiguous, or 2, if you get a cluster of a few signals that might mean they want you to go, or it might mean something else. So for example, if someone's not giving much eye contact, they might want you to leave, or they might be looking at something, or they might be nervous. If someone's looking at their phone, they might want you to leave, but they also might just be finishing a text before they focus on you properly. They could even be trying to find something on their phone to show you that's relevant to what you just mentioned to them. If someone gives short answers, they might want you to leave, or they might just be talking like that because they think it sounds cool, or they might be bad at conversation. If they do all 3 of those in a short space of time, then that's another good time to leave. So if you get a cluster of a few signals in a short time frame, a rough number is 3, but the number is not really an accurate thing to use because it depends on like how relaxed the situation is, how fast they're talking and stuff like that. So just a cluster of these signals in a short time frame is another good time to leave. So 2 times to leave. 1, unambiguous signal, definitely they want you to go, not reasonable to interpret in any other way. 2, several unambiguous signals where they might want you to leave, or it might be something else in a short time frame. also a good time to leave. Remember, if you leave too early, this can also upset people the same as pestering someone and not leaving and constantly talking to them can also upset people, because they might be enjoying the interaction and then you leave suddenly and then they're left thinking, what did I do wrong? There must be something wrong with me, etc. So it's good to have a balance of not bothering people too much, and also leaving too easily is also bad at the same time. So you want to try and hit for optimum roughly. So in order to decrease nervousness and decrease negative thinking faster, one is any situations you're having where you're having good emotions and you think the other person or people are as well, try to make it last as long as you can up to one of those points. They say they have to go, or one of those two end points I just mentioned. So that's one thing you can do. The next thing that you want to do, straight after you leave that conversation, or if you forget, then just as soon as you remember, but ideally straight after, list at least 3 things that you're grateful for that happened in that interaction. And definitely do that before you do any further assessment into parts you could have improved, etc. Emotions are much more, at least 10 times more important, I would say, than information, details, and technique in social situations. So if you're going to assess what you did wrong and what you can improve on, and it's making you have negative emotions, it's not worth it. You're better off just not knowing. The fact that emotions are so much more powerful than details is shown by how the genius super nerd often ends up not very good at social situations, and then you get the biggest idiot ever who's just really confident and does really well in all of them. It's because in this situation, the genius super nerd is actually not being intelligent regarding this area, because they haven't spotted that emotions are way more important than information, details, knowledge, technique, etc. So first you want to do 3 things you're grateful for. Then if you want to have an assessment and like think what you could have done better, etc., fair enough, go and do that, but don't do it if it's making you feel bad or making you have less confidence or making you more nervous. Not worth it. You're better off not knowing in that case. So that's the second thing you can do. The third thing that I'd recommend is that you afterwards, if it's a good interaction and you felt good, remember it loads on purpose. Purposely keep remembering it throughout the day afterwards and the next day. And write at least 1 paragraph minimum about it. So what you're doing here is you're powering up that experience and making that experience more of a big impact on your subconscious. Because the way that I believe it works is that people have a perception with their subconscious of what they expect to happen when they go into an interaction. And because most people spend way more time thinking about this than they do actually going to talk to people, their perception gets skewed away from reality towards negative, because they're mostly going through these scenarios in their thoughts rather than in reality. So by doing this, if you imagine it as scales, perhaps, on one side you've got all of the negative perceptions you've got, either from actual situations that did end up being negative, and also thoughts that you've had about how other people will react and about yourself and stuff like that. And on the other side, you've got the opposite, the positive. The weight that you've just put on the positive side by having this interaction that went well is going to be increased due to you remembering it loads, and also due to you writing about it is basically just more remembering it. But I feel like writing it down has more of a significant effect. Plus you can also go back to it later as well. Apparently you get over 3 times as much information from handwriting. I read this somewhere, I don't know for sure that this is true, but I remember reading it somewhere, from handwriting than you do from typing, because of how you link up your movement with the memorizing. So it adds like another sense to the memory, which makes it more remembered. The strength of the memory, it may be easier to remember that way. So in order to speed up how fast you can overcome nervousness and overcome unreasonable negative thinking in social situations, we've got 1, that you try to stay in positive interactions for as long as possible. And as long as possible doesn't mean that you follow them around for the rest of their lives, obviously. Like I mentioned, I gave you good points to know when is a good time to leave and not make other people feel pressured or bad in any way. 2, list at least 3 things that you're grateful for about that interaction after the interaction. And 3 is that you remember it a lot on purpose and write at least 1 paragraph down if it was a positive interaction, especially if it was one that's especially notable. The 4th thing that you want to do is if there's a certain type of person who you feel very nervous towards, or you have like a negative perception of this type of person. So people who dress in a certain way, or people of a certain age, or who go to a certain place or something like that. I've never come across like a type of person. So obviously there are subcultures, right? So you have like goths and like people who are street and hippies. So these are subcultures, and obviously there's cultural differentiations between someone from the UK versus China, etc. I've never come across any subculture or culture where I felt like people were mostly nasty ever. But I don't think that makes sense. I feel like if any group of humans are more mean than they are nice, they surely would have gone extinct, because humans have to rely on cooperation to survive. So if it's a type of person you have a negative perception towards, that you get especially nervous when you think about going to talk to them or in whatever situation, when you're feeling good and you're feeling like you've got some momentum and you're feeling sociable, go speak to those people on purpose, because that's going to be the most valuable situation that you can have go positive, and it's most likely to go positive. And also, if it was one of those people, make extra sure to do the things that I mentioned just beforehand and do more of them as well, because you'll get more power at decreasing your negative perception that way. Bear in mind, my assessment of social situations, remember I've coached full-time for over 11 years. I've pushed myself tons and tons to the point where I'm really good at this stuff. And I've assessed tons of different situations involving lots of different kinds of people. They're overwhelmingly positive. The good stuff that happens in social situations is way bigger and way more common than the bad stuff, which obviously does happen sometimes, but tends to be very infrequent and not that much significance. The bad stuff tends to be, I would say, about 0.5%, 1 out of 200 social situations, I would say. Obviously, I'm not a walking spreadsheet, right? I haven't counted everything I've ever experienced, but that's just like my estimate. I would say about 0.5% of situations end up being more bad than good in terms of the net result of all of the people involved. The emotions were worse, whereas a positive situation in this instance, I'm classifying as the net emotions of everyone involved was more positive as a result. The bad ones, I would say, only happen 1 time out of 200. Most of the time, it's just someone felt awkward, someone got a bit offended for a second, like the topic was boring, it was a bit of a waste of time. Whereas the good ones have results such as you have a new friend for like 10 years. That one event outdoes like thousands and thousands of these bad ones. The reason for this is super simple. 1, people like feeling good. The best way to have a good time in a social interaction, nearly all of the time, is to put in a lot of your effort towards making the other people there have a good time. Even if we picked someone who is 100% selfish, just some complete sociopath or something, even then, the vast majority of the time, the best way that they can have a good time in a social interaction is largely, obviously not entirely, but largely going to be based around making the other people there have a good time, so they can get something out of it, get responses even. Secondly, if 2 people interact, or more than 2, if people interact and they're having a good time, they're probably going to want to continue it for longer. If people interact and they're having a bad time, they're probably going to not want to continue it for longer. So based on these 2 super simple reasons, that means that 1, the good stuff is way more likely, And two, the good stuff continues and therefore becomes bigger and more significant, and the bad stuff very rarely continues and tends to get cut off. So the odds are massively in your favor. The same way that a casino, if you go into a casino, the reason the casino is still there and it makes money is because statistically you're more likely to lose than you are to win. The roulette wheel is a good example of this. The chances of getting a red or a black on the roulette wheel are below 50% because the zero is green and you get double your money back. So basically you're on average going to lose money. Social situations like the opposite of that, but by miles. Bad stuff will happen here and there, but the good stuff is way, way, way more common and is way more significant. Also bear in mind that any situation that is not negative, even if it seems like not much happened, that you ask someone directions even, and they just responded and that was it and wasn't that interesting. I think that even those situations are more good than bad. Humans are animals that rely on cooperation, so it makes sense that any non-negative situation gives us positive emotions in order to incentivize us to speak to others. Lots of you might be familiar with an experience along the lines of you're in a bad mood traveling from one place to another, and then on the way, someone asks you directions. It's not that eventful, they just ask you and you tell them the way, and then your emotions improve quite a bit as a result. Also, bear in mind, a lot of a positive impact happens after the situation, when people remember it afterwards. So, for example, if you gave someone a compliment, you said that the clothes that they were wearing looks pretty cool. And then they were sort of in a bit of a daydream and they didn't respond properly and they said thanks, and then you walk off. A lot of the time people might think, oh, they thought I was weird. But most of the time what happened is something along the lines of they just weren't focused properly, you surprised them a bit by speaking to them, and then afterwards they felt good. They was like, oh, that was nice actually. And the positive impact, I think, afterwards is actually like quite a lot more most of the time than what actually happens in the situation when people remember it afterwards, plus knock-on consequences as a result. If you make someone feel better, they're likely to then go and interact with others more positively and have more good results. Versus if someone's angry, they're more likely to be angry towards others and then cause those people to be angry. So there's like a ripple effect that happens as well. So that's today's video on how to more quickly overcome nervousness in social situations and overcome negative thinking towards social situations. If you are interested in our one-to-one coaching, we go through areas like how to build a circle of friends, how to hold conversation, how to flirt, how to be funny, how to overcome nervousness, how to manage your emotions. If you're interested in that, we offer a free trial session. Just check the link in the description or go on our website. You can find out more information if you want to book one. Also, we have a video course on how to not run out of things to say in social situations, plus how to overcome nervousness. The link's also in the description. And if you want to join our WhatsApp group chat, which I'm in, and I answer people's questions, people have discussions on social skills. I like post stuff I think of or figure out or find out from social situations. If you want to join that, the link's in the description as well. I'm aiming to work up to making one video a day on YouTube. So stay tuned and you'll get to have loads more of my 11 years of social skills coaching given to you. Also, if you've got any questions, feel free to comment them below and I'll answer you. It might take me a day or two to get back to you, but I'll make sure to answer them. Stay tuned.